To begin, and I will say that today is a good day. I am doing well. I have been engaging in much self-care that includes yard therapy and fishing and doing some other weekend warrior types of activities. So I'm feeling very grounded and also very grateful that things are as well as they are.
Thank you, Pam.
I can follow up just by saying I'm feeling fantastic, or at least optimistic. Even during difficult times now, pandemic, racial unrest, there's still a bright future I like to think of. I think that we all could be part of the solution or we could be part of the problem. And I just believe every day I wake up, it's an opportunity to make a difference. So I'm really optimistic.
Norman, thank you for that. Elwis, what's on your heart?
Had a couple tough conversations today with some people. Tend to talk more about life than money in here, but because of course they both affect each other. So sometimes it tends to weigh on me a bit. But yeah, just thinking about other people's situations.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask our tech director, Rob Huff. He doesn't know I'm going to ask him, but I'm going to ask him how his heart is today, since we can see his face.
Doing well. Like everybody else, I think I'm dealing with today's heat, but looking forward to some enlightening conversation tonight.
Thank you, Rob. And Rob, thank you ahead of time for all of your expertise. All right, so the first question we want to ask is, let's start with a short discussion about the financial difficulties that you are seeing for people in our community right now. Norman, do you want to start that?
Certainly. Well, today is the last day of the extra $600 stimulus check. Congress is, of course, battling and arguing. It passed the House that wants to continue the 600. The Senate wants to make it 70% of your income. I believe that resolution should happen within 30 days, but that's tough for some people. Also, they did extend the foreclosure moratorium until October, which gives some people a little peace of mind. But unfortunately, I think we really have to discuss the potential homeless pandemic that could be coming if we do not address certain issues. I mean, thank God there's a lot of rental assistance programs out there, and hopefully we can get that message across. It's not a time to do the ostrich approach and just bury your head in the sand. We want to start addressing these issues right now, potentially financial coaching. There's a lot of Center for Strong Families. There's a lot of people that have lost their job or are looking for jobs, can't even receive services. I mean, the Social Security Administration is not open, so if you lost your Social Security card, driver's licenses by appointment only. It seems like the barriers I've dealt with, there seem to get even harder now that we're in the pandemic, and I just hope people don't lose their faith, don't lose hope. There is services out there, and I just want to direct them towards those services.
Thank you, Norman, for that. Elwis, what are you seeing out there in terms of financial difficulty in the community that you are a part of?
Well, no one is affected, or no one has not been touched, shall I say, by any of this. Even dealing with investment accounts like I do, I see people are needing to touch theirs more here recently because of the CARES Acts that have been passed by our governments that allows people to do so. with delaying that penalty. I see people just asking more questions about it as if they're just preparing for, preparing for things that they weren't really prepared for, and trying to scramble to do so. So it turns out that as I'm asking people, hey, what's your cushion look like? What's your emergency fund look like? And we forget those fundamentals of finance. So even those with hefty or heftier, shall I say, investment programs don't have the savings accounts needed to help sustain themselves through maybe 1 or 2 months worth of savings, if that. So it's just opening the eyes to see that nobody is not being affected by this in any way. Personally, I deal with a lot of, I have a lot of kids. So I have 7 children. So talking, of course, and being around people that have kids, we're all looking back at our budgets and saying, okay, they're at home now. And of my children, 5 of them are teenagers. So they're eating. And even if you did have savings there, you're looking at your monthly budget and saying, okay, well, where is this extra money going to come from? Because now, not only do they want to make 1 or 2 sandwiches for lunch, they want to make 3 or 4. They want to eat a full dinner at lunch. Where is that money going to come from? And I just look at myself and say, well, I'm still working. I'm one of the people that have been blessed to still be working, still be employed. Do I really need to go to the school to pick up that free lunch that they offer? Or can I let someone else who might not be working go pick that up? I don't want them to run out because I took 7 lunches, and it's just that thought that I have. And I've talked with some parents who are in the same boat, who are still working from home. Don't mean to monopolize the floor, but mental health speaking, with those that are being in the house, and then your kids coming at you, and then you're thinking about, again, to bring it back to finance, you're thinking about how much extra money you're going to spend on food and budgeting this, that, and the other. It's definitely been a lot.
Pam, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Absolutely. Just to really follow up with what both Norman and Elwis said, we know that so many folks have been, the eviction moratorium really kind of staved off people losing their housing, and we're really grateful for Governor Inslee and that he extended that. And at the same time, the Department of Commerce is forecasting that perhaps up to 30,000 folks will be become homeless because of the pandemic. We already had an epidemic with the housing crisis in our community, and the pandemic is going to exacerbate that. Because of the nature of the work that MDC is in, where we are seeing those folks who are in crisis, we're hearing daily that there are so many things that are compounding the issue, and that folks need assistance with their finances. Because like Elwis said, kids are home and kids eat. And when they're at home, that's what they do. They eat even more. And then there are folks who, because the schools will be online, they don't know if they will be able to qualify for childcare for when kids do go to school. There are all of these compounding impacts from the pandemic that are affecting people. And as Elwis said, no one has been unaffected, but there are folks who are least able to withstand the impacts of being affected, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, Pam, because we can look at before COVID and during COVID and before COVID. Obviously, there were issues with systematic racism, and now that we're in COVID, it becomes even more exacerbated. Would you agree with that, Pam?
Yeah, I mean, people were already being impacted, the bumps in the road that many of us feel. Some of us don't even feel it. We're just completely unaffected by it. But many of us feel it, but we just keep going. Doesn't really impact us too much. But for a lot of households, those bumps in the road will just cause everything to come to a screeching halt. That's pre-pandemic. And now place the pandemic on top of that. So it'll be really interesting to hear what our two experts have to say about financial guidance during these times.
So I want to ask this question. For Elwis and Norman, do you have some general advice about what people should be considering with their finances as the impact of COVID-19 continues to spread?
If you don't mind, Elvis, I'll start. Certainly look for generic brands, try to cut back on your expenses. We all see how much food is going up. Meat is really becoming outrageous. We are going to have to tighten our belts, do the best that we can. Just because you can't pay rent doesn't mean that you shouldn't put some money aside to try to tackle this huge burden in the future. It doesn't mean that we should still be wasting our money. We are going to have to pull together. It's even tougher to find jobs. I mean, we still are providing jobs at Vallejo as a nonprofit staffing agency, but it's tougher to do everything, Amanda, and everything seems to be more expensive. And the last thing I want people to do is to give up hope. And then even if you can save $300 and your rent is $900, put that $300 away somewhere or talk to your landlord. Because what we're not saying is there's so many landlords that are on the edge right now. Just because they're a landlord doesn't make them immune to this crisis. If renters aren't paying and their mortgage is not backed by Fannie or Freddie, then they can get foreclosed on, and that still would be an eviction for our clients. So the best you can do is stay in communication with your landlord. At least put as much as you possibly can on. It's not a time to be frugal. It's time to tighten our belts, do the best that you can, and just don't lose hope during these times.
Thank you, Norman. Elwis, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I would say it's really time to get back to fundamentals. As Norman said, hope is really key, and oftentimes, as I work with people of all income brackets, everybody has waste. We are all wasting money somewhere. And when we actually, it's amazing that there are fewer people that I find that do budgets that actually have a budget in the higher income brackets. And so some people might think, oh, well, they make, $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year. They have, this $500,000 house. They're driving this type of car. They must, watch their budget well. And they really don't, because they make more than enough. So because they've been living in the land of more than enough, they haven't had to watch their budget. They're just at their natural, okay, great, I can go buy a steak. I can go get some salmon. We can go out to dinner if we want to go out to dinner. The kids want to go do this. Let's take them to go do that. No big deal. And they haven't had to be uncomfortable. Now, not to say that they haven't had to save, but they haven't had to be uncomfortable. Meanwhile, the people that are working two jobs at minimum wage, or even just the working poor who are making 40 or 50,000, and maybe I'm just going to talk about me when I was making those dollar amounts, and I still had growing kids, and it was a single income household. People might look at that, and if I said, well, yeah, I make about this much money, and they go, well, yeah, you're doing all right, but really it's not enough, because you still can't, you have enough for the need barely, but then you don't have enough for any want. You're watching your budget so closely. You're really scraping by, and they are the ones that do budgets more often than those who have a little bit more means. But even then, it's that in between where when we really boil it down and we say, what are the needs versus what are the wants? And really the needs versus wants, not pre-COVID, I need to go to the movies because I enjoy going to the movies and this is my personal mental health time, so I'm going to budget that X number of dollars a month to go to the movies and get popcorn. But do I really need to? No, you really don't. So then you can save that $25 or $30 or $40 a month that you were spending on that. And when you really boil it down and get down to the nitty gritty of that, people can typically save $100 to $200 a month, even on the slimmest budgets, from what I've seen. And we just really have to get back to those fundamentals. Like Norman said, we don't have to lose hope, but we have to be aware, again, just kind of piggybacking on the things you mentioned, that we are still going to need to pay that rent one day. My dad is 80 and from the country, so I use a little bit of country saying sometimes, but them chickens going to come home to roost. I'm from Tacoma, and I don't even know why I still say that, but I say it because he said it. So, but they're going to come home to roost, and that bill's going to come due. It's been delayed in most cases, not forgiven, from my understanding of that. And delayed still means you got to pay it. So while I've seen people out here going out and, oh, the mall's open, so let's go get some shoes. Oh, well, I got some extra money now, so let's go get some, go support this restaurant. It's all well and good to support our local small businesses. I love supporting the local small businesses, but you will not get my mortgage money, just pure and simple. And we have to make sure that we're not out spending this money trying to make sure that our favorite restaurant stays around. You got to make sure that you stay around.
So well said. We have 2 questions in our Q&A, but I want to ask Pam if she wants to add anything to that before I pose these questions.
No, I was just going to, what I heard loud and clear is making the distinction between the needs and the wants, and that's a great place to begin.
I agree with that. Okay, so here is the question. Talk about needs and wants. The first question is, I was not raised to talk about a budget like many others. I've learned it's not taboo to discuss budget, but that took time for me to get comfortable and reach out for help to learn how to save and look for the best deal. So I want to talk about that first, because I think I wasn't raised to talk about budgets, and I have white privilege. So when we look at communities of color, Pam, Norman, and Elwis, how do we go about having those conversations with people? And especially when we see members of our family suffering.
If you don't mind, I like to refer people to Center for Strong Families. The United Way has a whole network, 7 agencies, Center for Strong Families, that would love to talk with you about your budget, your credit, your net worth, your savings goal, what's your goal for education. I mean, there are agencies out there, just call 211. There's agencies running rental assistance programs. There's resources out there. I mean, MDC does a great job at providing resources for people in the community. And 211 is the place that is like the central hub where you will call to get help with those resources. So if you're uncomfortable talking about budgeting, credit, as a lot of us were raised without talking about those items, there are professionals that will do this free of charge. I mean, the Center for Strong Families, their mission is to bring 15,000 families out of homelessness, out of poverty, by 2028. So there is help out there. You just need to seek that help and start that discussion. And financial coaching doesn't start with that first appointment. It takes multiple appointments over and over again. So that way you can start seeing trends. Elvis kind of nailed it with that needs versus wants. When I'm doing financial coaching, I highlight all your variable costs, food, items that we can reduce, items that we can absolutely control, unlike rent or utilities. Those items are pretty much fixed costs, but seek out help if you're uncomfortable dealing with budgets. but you do have to do it on a consistent basis to start seeing trends, and start now.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that because I tend to go at it a different way. There was a time when every single one of us that are on this panel, at least we're all of age, and I'm assuming we all know how to drive. There was a time when you were uncomfortable getting behind the wheel of the car and driving, but you did it. So I tend not to go with the soft approach. Now, again, in my profession, I do help with budgeting some, but typically more on the upper end of it. And so when people are typically saying, hey, I need to start a budget, when I first started doing this, I was looking to help everybody. So great, yeah, we'll sit down and talk to you about your budget. Okay, great. And that's how I'm looking at things. And I know that, yeah, you're making $20 an hour. Well, sometimes you're saving more than those people that are making $100,000 a year because they're spending it all. But there's just no soft way to do it. Go Google it. You go look for everything else that you want. Go look for this. If you absolutely need to, you can change again, just going to talk about me. When I was laid off and didn't have a job for 2.5 years, I figured out how to change my alternator on my car because it needed to get done and there was no option for me to go pay for someone to do it. So I pulled up University of YouTube and I made it happen. If you want to, you will make it happen. And so again, to Norman, to your point, those resources are there and available. And once there's a certain point of commitment that people have, that's when I tend to kick in with them. But I just tell them to go Google it. If you haven't done your budget and you're telling me you want to start investing, I'm going to print off a budget sheet for you and I'm going to say, fill this out and then come see me when you're ready. Because I've just talked to too many people that they want the idea of budgeting or of investing. They want to dress up and look nice. They want to wear the cufflinks and the collared shirt and drive the nice car and do all of this, but they don't actually want to do the work. It's not easy. Get over it. Sorry if that comes across a little harsh.
It comes across as loving. That's what it comes across as.
I'd like to add, the question was, how would we talk to people about this? And the resources that Norman and Elwis bring are fabulous. The first thing, though, that we have to do, and especially for oftentimes the communities we serve, communities of color, as you heard, many folks have said, hey, we weren't, including you, Amanda, we weren't raised to talk about budgets. There is a stigma attached to money and talking about money. It's almost unspoken. Here's something that you don't talk about. That needs to be dispelled, and we need to really impress upon everyone, including the folks who are listening and to your networks, that there is nothing to be ashamed about when it comes to talking about money. The shame is in not talking about it and you're drowning. If you were in the middle of the ocean and you were drowning, you would be trying to get somebody to help you. So it's the same thing with finances, to say, and it's okay to say, hey, I'm having trouble. I don't know what to do here and I need some help. And then to, as both Norman and Elwis have said, hey, here are resources and these are good ways to start. I love what Elwis said, when you first got behind the car, you didn't really know what you were doing. What I've always said to my kids is, when you first stood up to walk, you didn't know what you were doing either, but you figured it out. So it's the practice of the process that helps us to get better.
And if I can take back one more thing, sorry to cut you off, but especially the first couple of times you do a budget, it's going to be horrible. You're going to be off, and that's okay. The budget it's like playing darts with a moving dartboard. It'll never be perfect, and that's all right. But the fact that you're thinking about it more is going to make you better at it. And then if we weren't raised to talking about money with our parents, make that shift now. You be the difference. Talk about money with your children. And if you're uncomfortable with that because you don't want them to either know how much you make or how little you make, then just give them a generic figure, but talk about it. Got it. You have to talk about it. Just like with anything else, we have to start teaching them early.
Absolutely. Not to mention that you could also recognize areas you can improve. When you sit down with a budget, there's so many times I'm doing a budget with someone and they don't realize how much they're spending eating out. They don't realize how much beer costs and they're spending. I mean, during a pandemic that we're dealing with, a lot more people seem to be drinking. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but that is an expense and it can become quite expensive. So don't just give up. Recognize where you can cut back and do that. But starting off budgeting allows you to recognize how much we're spending on entertainment, how much we're spending on groceries, how much we're spending on eating out, how much cigarettes cost. Oh my gosh, how much alcohol costs. All those things are variable costs. I mean, if you're not looking at it, you may be even unaware of where your pitfalls are or where those spending leaks are in your budget. So starting up with a budget is the best way to start off.
So many times, and Pam, I loved your analogy of the person in the ocean that's drowning and looking for help. Oftentimes when we are drowning and we're not checking our mail because we're getting those notices and we're scared, we start to look at things that are not healthy for us. And I want to talk about predatory lending. Predatory lending has become even bigger during these times. So Norman and Elwis, what can people do to first off recognize a predatory lender and either obviously recognize it, but if you haven't recognized it and now you're involved with it, what steps can they take?
Gosh, I mean, one of the key things to identify predatory lending is they usually don't express the interest rate in the form of an APR. They will say it's 20% per week. That's what usually payday lenders do. They try to make it more palatable by playing with numbers and manipulating numbers. What can you do? Quite honestly, I would say part-time, maybe drive for Uber. Recognize that payday lending can be a pitfall to where you have to go back over and over and over again. And once you recognize you're paying 700%, you'll never, ever, ever borrow your way out of that. The best thing you can do is start looking at the big picture. That's your credit, your budget, your balance sheet. What kind of income supports are available for you? Maybe it's the time to swallow your pride a little bit. And if you qualify for food assistance, maybe apply for it. Recognizing that there is utility assistance, there's rental assistance, there's all types of programs. And I know for me, when I needed those programs, it was tough for me to accept those because of my pride. But when we're in these tough times, we have to recognize increasing our disposable income may be the only way we can pay bills or even stay afloat.
Yeah, that'd be the biggest thing is that pride will get you. That pride hurts more than anything else. And if it looks like a duck and sounds like a duck, walks like a duck and acts like a duck, it's probably a duck. So, I mean, when you get to looking at that thing and you saying, well, how can they make it so low? It's because you're paying that low $10 a month for the next 52 weeks. Okay, great. All you did was borrow $100. So you're going to end up paying back $500 for that 100 that you gave. Look at there should be a line on any type of lending agreement. I've been out of lending for a while, but it should say the total cost of the loan, which should tell you the total amount that you're going to repay, including interest. Look at that number. And if you don't like it, I say it's just like with buying anything. If you're going to buy that $100 from that lender, and you know that it's going to cost you $500, so you're going to end up repaying a total of $600, the $100 you took plus the $500 in interest, and it's not worth it to you, then don't take it. Now, as Norman said, there's only two other options. You got to spend less or make more. And that's really what it boils down to. And it might boil down to, sorry, you have to get up early in the morning and before your normal job and go to work somewhere else. Sorry, you have to stay up late after your normal job and go to work somewhere else. And it's not going to be nice, but it will be worth it. And again, that's just something that I can tell you from personal experience. I worked in the banks during the day and I worked at the banks at night, cleaning them in different companies. Why? Because I needed to make more or spend less, and I could not spend less. So I had to make more. And that's just kind of really what it boils down to. That was before Uber and everything was around. So now we have a lot of different vehicles to do so. I mean, even down to the point where I got a couple teenage boys that have been cutting grass and doing random odd jobs for people. And I'm looking at the money in their bank account right now as they're trying to go buy a gaming computer. And so over the last 2 months, these boys have made a little bit of money. And I'm like, hey, hold on there now. Y'all might need some labor. I might want to go make a little extra because I see that, hey, there's something else that I want over there and it's not in my regular budget. So I got to make more or spend less if I want to get it. So I might get out there and pressure wash something with them just so I can have whatever it is that I want to have. But yeah, it really boils down to we have to make more or spend less, and we have to swallow that pride, get that pride out of your way, because that is typically the biggest obstacle to doing things. You can say that you got kids and you got to be there with the kids, and you have to be you got to watch them. The babysitters can't. You can probably find somebody that you trust, and I understand that's very difficult to have, but someone that you trust, either in your family or at church, whatever it may be, to watch your kids for a couple hours while you go make a little extra change. And I'm pretty sure that they would be more than willing to do so, because it's not you trying to go out on a date with he or she, or you trying to go out to the bar, you're trying to go to work. And they'll probably be willing to accommodate you in that sense. And again, maybe I'm just talking about my own personal past, but yeah, we got to get that pride out the way.
Very well said. So in this time, and also to coattail on that, Elwis, as we look at COVID-19, are those extra jobs harder to find?
I would say no, because I go on to these job websites. My son is just turned 14, looking for work. Now, it may not be the jobs that we want, I'll say that, but it might be the job that you need. I got to a point, and again, I just feel like it's best to talk to people from a personal perspective. So that's why I keep on saying in my past or when I've done, I had a lot of pride. And man, I took a big, deep swallow of one day, because I said, no, I'm never going to work fast food. I pride myself on breaking trends. So the typical teenage job is working in a fast food restaurant. And I never wanted to work a fast food restaurant. Well, it got down to the point, it was the summertime, I was in college, and there was no other jobs available. And I needed the money. So I applied to Burger King, and I applied to Jack in the Box, and I applied to Taco Bell. I applied to all of them and didn't get none of them. But I applied. I ended up working at a furniture store. The jobs that we don't want are typically there. And it's just, our pride getting in the way. Those jobs are out there. Every time you drive past Taco Bell, it says help wanted. I see them every single day. Big sign in the window, help wanted, drivers needed, whatever it may be. They're there. You just might not want to take it, but it's there for you.
There are jobs out there, Amazon, Safeway. I know we've got several new contracts. Essential workers are working. Uber Eats is really big right now, especially where everybody has to stay home. I mean, I know it's super expensive, but if you're driving, you're not buying the Uber Eats. There are jobs out there. It's just tougher to go find them. And when you haven't had to look for a job in a long time, maybe you may need a little assistance because everything's online. You have to have your resume updated, even on some jobs that you would not typically think that would need a resume. But they're out there, Amanda.
Good to know. Good to hear that. We have a question that does have to do with jobs, and I want to read this to you. This person says, I have a staff person who doesn't know if she'll be able to continue work in September. because she can no longer qualify for childcare and school will not be in attendance. What would you say to this person?
Speak with your employer first and foremost. I mean, let's start those conversations. You know, I have 3 kids, Amanda, and Kelly is dealing with, both of us are dealing with, but she usually takes the brunt of it. Fortunately, Goodwill is very accommodating for Kelly. I know Vallejo is very accommodating for me, but the truth of the matter is you're just not as productive with your children at home. I can guarantee you that. Possibly babysitting for other people. That's a huge need that's coming along. I'm starting to hear more teachers pulling together to do tutoring services. There is options. I think we just have to put our heads together to come up with those options. But you're absolutely right. I'm concerned how the next couple months are going to pan out. If we, I'm just concerned. Let's just say that.
I do know of a couple of companies that are out there that are actually paying their employees to watch other people's kids while they work. And let me not say a couple. I know of one company that is doing that. So if one is doing it, I'm assuming that more than one are doing it. So they allow their employee to work from home and they say, hey, you know, if you can take someone else's child, and it might just be within that same company, that again, that part I'm not sure, but they're saying if you can take someone else's child and have them at your home while you're working, we will pay you to let that person work. So I think it is the same company, but I mean, there are resources out there. This is really where it comes down to, it takes a village. You know, it may not be that, you know, maybe auntie or grandma or brother, sister doesn't want to, doesn't want to watch kids. You know, they've had their turn raising children. They wiped your butt and they don't want to wipe someone else's butt. But unfortunately, it might take a village. You know, I look at that with my own situation too. I have 17-year-old daughters and I have 5-year-olds. You know, so I have 7 kids. So, and like you mentioned, Norman, we're just not as productive when the kids are coming up and they're asking you every nonsensical question that they can think of. And then they're telling you that so-and-so hit me. So, you know, you get all of that, all the while you're trying to do whatever it is that you have to do. You're trying to be on a Zoom call and then you got to turn the video off so you can say, get out of here, you know, or mute yourself in the middle of when you're talking. We're just not as productive. So we have to get that village. And if it's getting that 10-year-old to say, hey, sit down with the 5-year-old for a minute, or hey, auntie such and such, good friend here, we got to access our village. And then if you are part of that village, you have to be willing to open yourself up. It is so great to help somebody else. I done helped other people sometimes and I done been helped. And it feels better to help someone else. So, you know, we got to open ourselves up to help others.
What a great idea for those employers who are listening to start some kind of in-house, it takes a village for children. And, you know, we already call them coworkers, so we're not very far off on that. Norman, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just starting to think maybe we should start talking to our employers to see if we could start such a program and you implement it with your employer. You're not the only one in this boat. We all are in this boat together and we all have kids and we all recognize the last couple of months how difficult it is. Well, if employers want to keep their star employees, then they're going to have to also change, also modify, also adapt to the situation. Otherwise, you know, I can see people leaving jobs after the pandemic's over, maybe not now, but, you know, you stay at an organization that treats you well.
Absolutely.
I'm an employer, so I'd like to speak. So we have been recognizing for some time that we will likely be in the space that we are in for longer than what was initially thought. And what I have asked my leadership team to do is look at what types of accommodations and adjustments, what types of modifications do we need to make? What are the positions and what are the key functions that can be provided remotely? What are things that we need folks on site to be doing? And so we've been doing both of those things. We have essential frontline services where people need to come into the space to provide those service. And then there are the things that people can be doing remotely. And I also recognize that we have a huge challenge looming with, especially with schools, all pretty much, they're announcing we're going to be online, and what will that mean for the households, and how will that impact our staff? So we are looking at those things now.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And as always, MDC seems to lead the way on those types of things. I wanted to kind of change gears for a second, and I want to talk about, we have already heard from the Census Pulse report data that many people across Washington have resorted to using credit to pay for essential needs. They're using their credit cards. In a situation like this, what can people do to clean up or raise their credit scores? And I know this is kind of precarious, but what can they do?
Keep your balance to 30% of your limit. Almost as important as paying your bills. That's 35% of your credit score is paying your bills. 30% of your credit score is this revolving debt utilization. So almost as paying your bills, almost as important as paying your bills for your credit score is how much do you owe on your credit. So the simple general rule of thumb is keep it to 30% of your available credit limit. If you have to use them, certainly don't exceed 50. But I mean, if your choice is to buy groceries or worry about your credit score, Amanda, that's not a choice to me.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to paying it off, I'll say after you've had to use it again, emphasize the need to use it. Okay. We hopefully didn't use this to go out to the bar. Didn't use this to go out to dinner. We use it to go buy food to make for dinner. Okay. Pay the light bill if necessary, things like that. So once we've got in that situation, and then now we have to crawl ourselves out that hole. I like the snowball method. During my years of being an underwriter in the past, the snowball method has just seemed to be the best. I mean, for those listening, if you just Google it, you'll find it 100 times over. But essentially, you focus on one bill. People tend to spread it around and say, "Hey, I'm going to pay $20 extra on all 5 of these bills, so that's $100 extra a month." Now you take that 100 and you put it all on one bill, and you make minimum payments to the rest of them. And then once that one is paid off, you take that 100 plus whatever the minimum was, and you roll it over to the next bill. So that next bill is getting $140 a month, whatever it may be. And you snowball that until it gets to you're paying $700 a month on one card, and it gets knocked out in 3 months or however long time it takes. But that's the after you've crawling your way out. That's the method that I like, at least.
Very good advice. Very good. We have somebody who also said, what about a closed account on your credit? Can you explain what that is and how it would impact your credit, gentlemen?
Derogatory credit stays on your credit report for 7 years unless it's federal debt. Federal debt would be back taxes, child support, student loans, that they can take tax returns. In most situations, a derogatory trade line that's 6 years older, it makes more sense to open up a secured credit card if your goal is to increase your credit score. The most important thing on your credit report is about the last 2 years. So I would prioritize debt by the most current going back forward. And in some situations, you want to dispute them. You can look at your credit report at annualcreditreport.com, where you can look at all three of them: TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. You can dispute any information on it that's inaccurate. It's a great tool to review your credit report. So derogatory trade lines stayed on for 7 years. So it does make sense to look at your credit report, because there's too many times I'm seeing people with Apple Health, and yet they get a collection account for the copay, whereas there should not be a copay, or there is some other debt. I see too many medical collections on credit reports to where it's just becoming a common practice. So review credit reports, I argue, every 4 months. That way you can pull one of each of the three. Every 4 months, do a monthly financial update. That's your budget, your balance sheet. Determine what your debt to income ratio is, and then review your credit report.
Elwis, do you want to add anything to that?
No, he basically covered it all. Now, if the account's not derogatory, then it's just showing on there it's closed and no big deal. As far as I remember, again, that was about a decade ago that I was in that field, but yeah, no, you covered it all.
So another question from our audience is, what free resources are out there for credit counseling?
211. Let's see. Center for Strong Families, that's Goodwill, Sound Outreach, Tacoma Community House, Pierce County Housing Authority, Tacoma Housing Authority, Bethel School District, and Clover Park Technical College. All those do free resources and do financial coaching, and that can last for 2 to 3 years. I mean, they're going to look at your credit report. They're going to do a budget with you. There is financial coaching out there that is free of charge.
If you're, again, let me preface this by saying that, well, I guess legally I do not give credit advice, but also this information may be a little old because, again, it's been a while. Be aware if it's consumer credit counseling services to report on your credit report as CCCS, because in some cases you may not be behind. Now, again, I'm speaking as what it was. I'm not sure what it still is. So Norman, maybe you can chime in on that if it still is this way. If you're just struggling to make the payments but not behind, what I have seen in the past is that you contact some of these resources of consumer credit counseling services, and they tell you, oh yeah, we can consolidate this debt and give you one ridiculously low payment. Well, what I have seen on credit reports is what they have done is you got card 1, 2, and 3, and they're all paying $100 a month each on it. They say, stop paying them and pay it to us and we'll pay it. We'll take care of it. Well, then they don't pay card 1, 2, and 3 because you weren't behind yet. And so they don't pay those cards because they won't negotiate unless you actually are behind. So they have to wreck your credit in order to fix your, not credit, but fix your budget, so to speak. Because if you're struggling making those payments and you got $300 worth of payments and they say, hey, we'll take it down to $85. And of course that sounds awesome, but they don't pay those companies for 3 months or more before they really start negotiating, and they settle it for a lower balance. And that CCCS, now again, this is back when I was doing underwriting, this was a number of years ago, to the underwriter. At that time, it made us look at it, and we were taught to look at it as if you basically filed for bankruptcy if this didn't work. So you need to be very careful before you enter into any agreement like that. Now, like I said, if some of that's changed, Norman, please correct me.
Consumer credit counseling is not around, but you nailed it on the head. Matter of fact, when I was making loans, consumer credit counseling was treated like a Chapter 13. Mm-hmm. So it was certainly derogatory. Then they would close your trade lines down. It would be just like a Chapter 13. So if you have to do that, it's better than the alternative of filing bankruptcy. But I would look for free resources first before you jump into something that appears to be too good. Because as soon as you go to consumer credit counseling, please understand, all of your available credit will be gone. So you will not use your credit cards again until it's current, and they may not even reissue them again. So consumer credit counseling, every time I've seen those, about 70% of them go into bankruptcy. There's almost always derogatory 30s, 60s, 90s on credit reports. I much rather to see it fixed myself. I've seen a couple newer ones that seem to be a little more advantageous, but I'm somewhat skeptical because of exactly what you said, Elvis.
We have another question here, and it's a great question, as all of these are. This question is this: I am in an income-based payment federal loan program in which I only make 0 payments for 10 years. However, every time I go to apply for home loans or business lines of credit, my credit report states I am paying $2,000 a month. Where do I go to correct this discrepancy between what I pay and what my credit report says?
So you're talking about student loans, Amanda. I would bring the note that you negotiated with those student loans to any lender, because you're absolutely right. Most lenders, including mortgages, they're going to take 2% of your student loans, and they could be in a deferment or a forbearance. They're still going to take 2% of the limit that's out there, because eventually you're going to have to pay those student loans. So if you're in a repayment plan, sometimes you can rehabilitate student loans that go in default, and they will allow for a payment of $0. But when you're qualifying for a car or you're qualifying for a house more long-term, more than 5 years, they're going to want to see some type of payment on that student loan, because you may be in a repayment plan now. You have to show proof it's $0 for 20 years, and then they will change that payment in your debt to income ratio. Otherwise, they're going to take 2% of what your limit is on the student loans.
For that, I have a couple more questions before we have to say goodbye. What advice would you give to someone who hasn't filed their tax return yet? Norman!
I only know Goodwill is starting to do taxes. I want to say the end of this month. I don't know exactly when, but they're going to start their after season tax program. It's going to be virtual. So because a lot of Vita sites closed down right towards the end of, right before the pandemic hit, basically in March. So a lot of people did not get their taxes done, and then they didn't get their stimulus checks. So I believe Vita sites are going to be coming back online as long as they have virtual set up, and I know Goodwill does. So potentially you may have some relief in those services as early as August the 1st. Otherwise, you could go to My Free Taxes, and if you make less than $64,000, you can do taxes free of charge. They do kind of tweak you if you have like capital gains or if you have self-employed taxes. They may charge you not the free service, maybe like $30, but myfreetaxes.com, because there are services out there. There are people that will be coming online. It just took a while to get the virtual tax down. It's really tough to do taxes well, a person in front of you.
So Norman, you said that's Goodwill. Did you say Goodwill Vita?
Yes, VITA stands for Voluntary Income Tax Assistance. It's the program that the IRS sponsors where you get volunteers, you have a site coordinator, and I used to run the program for a while. But yes, all VITA sites are in the area. I believe Sound Outreach suspended theirs. Amy Allison from Associated Ministries, she runs Pierce County Asset Building Coalition's VITA program, which Goodwill is under, and there's other multiple sites. The problem is it will not be in person. It's going to have to be on a virtual platform. So hopefully we can get more information out soon to come.
Excellent. If you want to add anything to that, Elwis?
Sorry, I'm clicking the button there. I stay away from taxes. I let the professionals handle that. And yeah, no. So yeah, go ahead and use those resources. TurboTax or whatever you use, and get them done.
Well said.
That's how I got on your show, Amanda.
Oh yeah, and full disclosure, Norman did my taxes this year. It's great to have a neighbor that does taxes. So I want to ask this last question before we thank you both so much for spending dinner time with us because you have families. So this is a family question, and here's the question. What advice do you have for parents in terms of teaching their children about how to build the habits to manage money?
Oh gosh, that's awesome. Go to a bank. Remember those things our grandparents used to have called check stubs?
Yes.
When you give your kids an allowance, give them a check stub, have them account for it. Go to a bank, open up a savings account with them. Goodwill does financial education. They give you a book. Go home and share that information with your kids. Show them what a credit report looks like. Make them an authorized user on your credit card and don't give them that credit card. Don't give them that credit card, man. I saw your face. But that allows them to build credit. I mean, authorized users, secure credit cards, co-signers, those are all ways our parents can help us build credit. But I would not give them a credit card. That doesn't make sense.
Elwis, so what, Elwis, what have you told your children?
So I try to break it down because as much as we think that adults know, we don't know nothing. You know that show a long time ago, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?
Yes.
Most of us financially are not. Okay. So when I broke this down, and again, this is when I started, I said, oh, hey, you know what? I got licensed when I was in the banks a number of years ago. I said, okay, great. I'm going to branch off and do it on my own. And I was working with people and I'm talking to them about it. And I can see the glossed over look in their face. And I knew I lost them. And it just went straight over their head. So I said, okay. And I made my 8-year-old at that time, 7-year-old suffer because I practiced on her. And I tried to break it down until she understood it. Okay. So when it came down to it, you know, when you're dealing with kids, you got to make it simple and repeatable. So overall, now this is Johnsonology. Okay. This doesn't come from anywhere else. This is not Edward Jones. This is Johnsonology. Okay. There are 3 things that we can do with money, and everything else falls into those 3 categories. Okay. We can save, we can spend, and we can give. And you have to do all 3, and you have to do them on purpose. Okay. Because you don't want to overgive and give away all your money, but then you don't want to not give any of your money because what you give comes back to you. Okay. You want love, give love, you'll get it back. Okay. You want money, give money, you'll get it back. Okay. Some of the richest people I know are also the biggest givers that I know. Okay. You have to save, and investing goes all underneath the saving category. Okay. You have to save money because you don't know when it's going to rain. All right. And when it rains, you're going to be happy that you saved money. Pay yourself first. I don't care how many times those bill collectors call you. Let them call and let that phone call motivate you to get off your butt and go make some more money. Okay. I'm sorry if I'm talking harsh or if it seems direct like that. I'm just talking to people like I talk to myself. And I talk to myself like a football player because that's what I used to do, and that's motivation that I need. So get off your butt and go make more money and let them bill collectors call and let them motivate you. Okay. Dangle that carrot. People that come in my office, I have a picture of a motorcycle on my office along with many other clients' dreams because I know what I'm working for. That vision board works. You have to see it first. Okay. So you save that money and then you have to spend money. We have to buy food and we have to buy clothes. We have to buy gas, things like that. Okay. But you do it on purpose. You don't make those impulse buys. So save, spend, give, do all 3, do them on purpose. Make your kids do them. When you give your kids that allowance, I'm just going to put my son's business out there. When he went on ahead and was doing this pressure washing and he made $175 in 2 days, I asked him, how much are you giving? How much are you saving? And how much are you spending? This boy is 14. Okay. I teach them about investments. They don't care about investments. They don't care how much the S&P earns. They don't care that the NASDAQ is doing awesome. They don't care if the market is up or down, but they care about Nike. They want them Jordans. So tell them about Nike stock. They want those Adidas. Tell them about Adidas stock. They want to get that whatever it is. Tell them about the stock. They want to play those video games. Tell them about the stock that they use on a regular basis that they don't know about. Make it interesting to them. Now, I'm saying to them, but I'm really speaking to adults, because this is how I have to treat adults in that same vein. Because again, we're all in 5th grade financially. So save, spend, give, do it on purpose, make it interesting to yourself. And then before I take an hour-long rant, I'm gonna stop.
I'll take an hour of that kind of advice, let me tell you.
I'd like to add that I actually did the same thing with my sons, and especially the youngest, who are twins. When I started with them very early, and I taught them the concept of 10, 10, and 80. And so 10% you give away, and we are a family of givers. So I told them, you can give that to church, or you can give it to a charity, or you can give it to someone you know who is in need. But 10% you give away. That leaves you with 90%. Then another 10% you save. And so my kids, when they were younger, the big thing for them was going to the state fair. And I would always tell them, you're going to want to go to the fair, and you're going to be trying to hit me up for money, save your money. And they learned to save their money from that. And then I said, so if this is $1, you still have 80 cents left. You have the majority of it left to spend. And now spend it wisely. Because now you know this is how much that you have. So that it is pretty much, it echoes what Elwis said. But I started when they were very young with that concept, and I see how that has benefited them. Now that they are adults, they're grown men, and they live on their own. They've been able to take that concept. So I really want to reinforce how important that is to do that.
That's brilliant, Pam. That's brilliant.
Richest Man in Babylon. It's just read the book. It's very King James Version for those Bible theologians or those that fell asleep in church that know. It's a very King James Version speech, but get past it and read the book. Get it on audiobook. It's available on a lot of different sources. Read the book. There's 7 rules in there. Use it, apply it, learn it, love it.
One of our listening audience also joined in and said that TAPCO Credit Union has a great program for young people, and that it's been used by the Boy Scouts, and her children benefited from that as well. Pam, would you send us home? You're on mute, my love.
There's an important question that I think we missed. I think it's a really good question, and that is, what is freezing your credit, and what is the benefit? So
Yeah.
if you all would answer that, and then we will wrap up.
You're on mute, Norman.
Norman, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
You can go to annualcreditreport.com and put a freeze on your credit report. What it does is it protects your identity, where you cannot have your credit report pulled, not for credit authorizations. You can also just go there, unfreeze it if you need to buy a car, and then refreeze it. It's a great tool, especially for our youth that are under 18 that won't be reviewing their credit reports. I see a lot of information put on credit reports even before they're 18. You cannot even legally enter into a contract until you're 18. So you can put a freeze on credit reports. What it does is it protects your identity. It stops any fraudulent activity, but it also hampers anytime you apply for credit. So it's a great tool just to protect yourself and your children.
Good catch,
Okay.
Pam.
Hey, this has been such a very valuable conversation. I think we are going to revisit this conversation in the next several months. I don't think that you can talk about this type of issue too much. We have so many takeaways from today's conversation. The importance of making the distinction between what's a need and what's a want, about using the resources that are out there, and not allowing our pride to get in the way of tapping into those resources that are established to help us when we need them, to make certain that we don't fall prey to predatory lending. If we either increase our revenue and decrease our expenses, how about both of those? That's a win-win. And to take advantage of the Center for Strong Families, which we heard Norman talk about so much. I listed several of those centers in the chat box for folks. I didn't catch all of them, but I did state a couple of times, call 211 helpline. That's definitely the resource, the go-to resource in our community. And I just want to say thank you so much to our panelists, to Norman Brickhouse and Elwis Johnson for joining us this evening. Thank you so much. Also to our wonderful moderator, Amanda Westbrook, who's always here. We appreciate you, Amanda. Rob Huff, our producer. Twyna Nobles, who is my partner in all things good, for being able to produce this. This is our 14th or 15th? 14th episode of Straight Talk. Be sure to tune in next Monday at 5 o'clock for the next episode of Straight Talk. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a good night.
Good night.